Hi, BookTube. Welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and I had literally just watched Ashley from A Frolic Through Fiction do a video where she talked about authors that she wanted to read more from. And I have done a video like that before, so I thought I would do it again because there are some different authors I have on there. Now, some of these are authors that I haven't completely, I haven't read. I haven't finished a book by them, but I could see them as potential authors I would continue with. Um, Although there's one in particular that I could potentially change my mind and realize later, not like later on after I've tried to continue with the book enough times that I might just give up on it. But I do not want to give up on that. So here are some books. Here are some authors that I want to read more from. Okay, I'm just gonna show them to you as I have them piled here. Okay. First is an author that is one of the ones that I haven't finished anything by her yet, but so far I really enjoy her writing style, and her first book is her debut novel was a pretty long book, and I want to finish that before I pick up her most recent release. And I think she has another book that came out that I did not hear a lot about. I didn't hear anything about on BookTube. But I don't remember seeing it. Of course, my bookstores are kind of small anyway, so, but that is Susanna Clark, and the book of hers I'm currently reading is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. And, so far, I like her writing style, and I like the premises of her books so far. Her most recent one was Piranesi, and I think it was on one of those prize nominees. Was a prize nominee. I don't remember which one it was nominated for, which award. But this one obviously was I think this one might have been on a also on a was on prize nomination as well. So I don't know which one, but I want to say it was on one of them, I think. But part of why it took me so long to pick up this book is not just the length, but also I was transitioning from mass markets to books this size, regular size paperbacks. So my first copy of this book was a mass market, and I actually, funnily enough, I had put myself on a list for this book when it came into my used bookstore, the one that's in walking distance, the Rose office, and I think it was yesterday. It was either yesterday or Thursday, Friday, either yesterday or Friday, that they left me a message saying that it finally came in, and I think I do remember seeing it. I think I did. I think I saw it at my bookstore. And I was kind of worried that the only one that I was very nervous because I didn't know how long it would be before it would finally come in, because, with used bookstores, you never know when they will have something. And on top of that, I was also worried it would be a mass market, that I didn't make it clear enough this is the size I wanted. So finally, I just decided to either put on my thrift books wish list or put on the Amazon wish list. And I think I got this off of Amazon. So that's why it took me, and then it's top off, it's a long book, so that's why it's taken me so long to read it. But this is a long books. I have a bad habit of starting them and then putting them down for a period of time and not coming back to them for years. And it doesn't mean I'm not interested, it just means I get distracted by other books. So I did bring it with me. We went on a little vacation. We went to visit my grandma this past weekend. this weekend, and this is one of the books I brought with me. And so her other book is Piranesi, like I said, and then the other one, Ladies of Grace Adieu. And I don't know anything about this book. I had not heard about this book, but it's on here as something else that she wrote. So I'll have to check that out as well. But mostly Piranesi, and then this one are her most popular work. So ones I don't hear a lot about, but I do want to check out that one and see what that one's about, because I really am a plot-driven reader, although I have made exceptions. But like, actually, I ended up deciding to DNF'd. I officially DNF'd it last night when I was listening to an audiobook, a book that I had, because it was free. I got it on my iBook audio reader, and I finally decided, you know what, this is boring me, so I DNF'd it. And it's actually doesn't have a whole lot of a plot. I mean, it does have a plot, but it's just this journey of self-discovery. And I was just thinking about that, and I really am a plot-driven reader, but I also think sometimes it can depend, because there are a lot of books that I have that I recently showed interest in that, and I feel like, well, then am I not going to like this? But no, I still want to give it a try. And I spent the money on it, so I definitely want to give it a try. But, yeah, so she has 3 books. Okay, next is actually a classic author. So I don't know how many books this author has, and I still do not know how to pronounce his name. I need to hear the pronunciation quite a few times before I finally can figure out the exact. But Fyodor Dostoevsky, the famous Russian author, the most famous one next to Tolstoy. And this is Brothers Karamazov. And then I have The Idiot, but I wanted to read this one first, which I think this might have been his last published work. I think it was either that or The Idiot. I don't know. And then there's also Demons, another one, and there's a few others that I've heard about from. Or Demons might be Tolstoy. I have to look that up. But I know that both him and Tolstoy have a lot of other books, but they're like this one, as far as Dostoevsky goes, I think this one, and then possibly The Idiot are the ones you hear the most about. They're the most well known. So I will look up. I'm gonna have to look up and see what other books are there. But I want to say Demons is one of hers. Demons is one of them, and I feel like there's a lot that I haven't heard about because they weren't as popular in America. But so far, like with Russian literature, I think the thing is the writing style is not as hard as people make it out to be. I think the only thing that makes it hard necessarily is they write really long books, and the names can be very confusing. I think that's what really throws people off, is all the names. Like, especially if you're American or if you're like English speaking, then sometimes I think people have trouble unless they've studied the language. I think people have trouble with with things like names and stuff. So I don't know how many books he has, but I definitely want to go through all of them, because so far I think they are very interesting. His books are very, very compelling and very interesting, and really very much makes you think. He's very Dostoevsky is very philosophical, and I think that's what people stumble on a lot of times. Oh, and I also want to reread Crime and Punishment. That was the first one I read, and I do want to reread that one. But I want to read this one and The Idiot first before I go back and reread the first one I read by him. But yeah, I think he's very philosophical. I think that's one of the other things why people don't have trouble, because he's long-winded, and just sometimes some of the things, you could probably cut out some stuff in his books, because they get very long-winded, very philosophical, and I imagine tedious at times. It's like, is this really necessary? But I do feel like a lot of classic authors, a lot of older authors, tend to do that, because I personally feel like we're very spoiled with the literature we have today. It's a lot more simplified and less dense, and authors don't. Not a lot of authors. I mean, there are some look at this. And then, there's a lot of fantasy authors that, but I think there's still some authors who write long-winded stories. But I think mostly we're pretty fortunate and very spoiled to have authors that just are more to the point, even if they're long. I mean, even when they're super long books, like they're over 1,000 pages, the authors will still, be a lot. The writing is a little more straight to the point. Like, Brandon Sanderson and I'm trying to think of the other author that I can't think of another author. But Brandon Sanderson, he's still Sarah J. Maas. They are authors that get straight to the point. They might get a little flowery with their language, but they are a lot more straight to the point and a lot more less flowery and less like describing every single detail of of a tree or what a person's thinking. They just but they could still be super long books. I mean, especially in fantasy is known for as the series progresses, the book gets longer, and sometimes that's just sometimes how authors feel. They feel like, I do think they feel like they gotta make their books long. But yeah, so this is Dostoevsky is another one. And again, I am so sorry, I still have not figured out how to pronounce his last name. Okay, then let me go ahead and talk about the other Russian author, Tolstoy. I've only read some of his shorter works. I have not read, but I have started both this one and War and Peace. And I've got a good chunk into War and Peace. And that's where I kind of realized that, when I started reading that's when I kind of realized that actually Russian authors aren't that hard to read. It's just the names can be very confusing. And they're long. Their books are really long. But to me, at least, they're not as hard as people make them out to be. So I feel like with this author, I debate about starting over with this one. Oh, and I really like how these vintage classics editions, the print is big. I like that. I like how the print is big, especially with older, books like this where it's not, where the stories are a lot more dense. I really appreciate, because I for me, the size of the print can help a lot for me to really get into a story. But so I want to read this one, and then I want to read, and then of course I want to continue with the War and Peace, and I'm trying to think of what his other works are that I haven't read. Like I said, I read his shorter works. Now unfortunately for me, those stories just didn't do it for me. So I guess I really couldn't say that this is he's an autobiographer, because I don't love everything by him. Like I did the short stories, The Death of Ivan Ilyich, and Kurtz Sonata. I can't remember what the other two were. I didn't hate them, but I didn't love them either. Like, they were kind of depressing stories at times, and which, again, we're dealing with Russian. I just didn't love them. So I ended up deciding to donate that collection. But I'm still glad I read them, though. So I don't know what other works Tolstoy has, but yeah, I want to read. So there's that. Now we have a non-classic author, and this is another one of the ones where I've started reading his works, And as of right now, I feel like I like what I read about him. And he was one of the first authors that I started buying from that was a little different than my usual purchases. But that is Ken Follett, and this is the first book in his Kingsbridge series. And this is the first book, Pillars of the Earth, and I think he's still working on that series. He's still writing books in that series. And then he also has the Century trilogy. So it really is only 2 series. I don't know if he has any other works. He probably does, but with me, the only reason why I don't always pick when I think I don't have a lot of authors, or I don't have there's authors that I might lose interest in eventually, like some of their works, is because I am, like I said, a plot-driven reader, and I have certain types of plots I like, and and I'm all for authors branching out and trying to write different things. I think you should try that as an author. I think you shouldn't, but I also, if you're more comfortable, I don't think it's a crime to stay in a certain genre and stay writing some type of. Now, I do know that a lot of people complain about certain authors, like Cassandra Clare, for instance, only stay in the Shadowhunter world. Or certain authors just staying with using certain character types only, like Sarah J. Maas. A lot of her female leads and male leads are very the same. A lot of the very similar types of character, like she writes. So I know that people complain about that, and I understand people's reason for complaining. But I'm also not going to punish an author if that's where they feel most comfortable. But they won't necessarily be favorites. So, with that being said, I don't know if Ken Follett has branched out and written other stuff. But he written more beyond those 2 series. I think he has. I think I've seen other works by him that has nothing to do with the Kingsbridge series or the Century trilogy. It's a trilogy, so obviously there's no more. Although apparently, just because you start out with it as a trilogy does not mean you can't write more. But yeah, so far I like this. I like his writing. It's just again, another author with their books are really long. So like I said, the writing can still be simple and easy and not as long-winded and dense, but it can still be, obviously they can still write a lot and it almost be too much at times. But I am really liking this, and I want to continue reading. And especially since these are the first books I ever bought here that were a little different for me, and the first books I bought just moving after we moved here to North Carolina. So this is a definite. Which I did try to stick to authors that have more than one, or like authors at least that even if their books are written, so far they're only written the one series, it's a series where they have different sub-series within that within that universe, because going back to Cassandra Clare is another one of those authors who writes in the one world, and so does Brandon Sanderson. If technically he writes in one world, it's a Cosmere world, it's one big world, but like they're all they're in little worlds within one big world, one big universe. So I guess it's like if you decided to, I guess with him, it's not like Cassandra Clare where she writes only the Shadowhunter stories. So, like with Brandon Sanderson, it's like basically taking, if people wrote stories wrote stories about Earth, and then wrote another series where it's about people living on Mars, or people living on Pluto, or people living on Venus, or people living in the Milky Way, although it probably won't be people, or at least the way we are, people like us, but, that's how Brandon Sanderson, Cassandra Clare is just the Shadowhunters. Maybe there's different families that she's writing about in different time periods in the Shadowhunter history, but it's still the Shadowhunter world. It's still on. So that is not a good comparison. But this next author is someone who so far is running kind of in the same world, but like Brandon Sanderson, she writes in different parts of the world, like with different characters. So I don't know how people feel about that. If they read Cassandra Clare and they also read Robin Hobb, is it the same? Would they think of it as the same way how Cassandra Clare writes, where she writes always about Shadowhunters? Well, obviously not always, because she writes about the werewolves and the vampires and stuff like that, and the warlocks. But anyway, so we have Robin Hobb and her, and she writes, this is, what is that? What's the world called? Excuse me, sorry. Where is it? There's what's that? I cannot remember what the overall world is called. I forgot what her overarching world is called, but this is the next series that a lot of people recommend after reading the Farseer trilogy. If you want to go chronologically, or you want to read in the order that is recommended. And as again another book that I've started and not to put down for a period of time. And so far I enjoy her worlds and her characters, and I even liked the Farseer. I didn't absolutely love it, but I did like it. I did have a good time with it. But I think like a lot of people, I will probably be more interested in this one for the same reasons that a lot of people are more interested in this. But yeah, I want to keep going with it because I like her writing and I like these worlds that she's created and these characters. She's really good with characters that are really, either hateable or likable characters that you just really feel for. Although I know not a lot of people love the main character, Fitz. I think a lot of people have complicated feelings about Fitz as the main character, but so I want to keep going with her world, and I don't know if she's any more works outside of this world, and I wish I could think of. I mean, in the middle of this video, I'm gonna think of what this world is called, but so yeah, I really think. I think her writing is really great, and this place that she's created is just really cool. So I want to keep going with her works. And then the other author is Juliette Marillier, and I know she's definitely written Beyond the Seven Waters. Ashley talked about Juliette Marillier, and like me, she's only read 2 books by her. In my case, it was Daughter of the Forest and Son of Shadows. I literally just finished Son of Shadows like a month ago, and this is the next one in the first trilogy, in the original trilogy. The third one in the original trilogy. And why are those? Okay, no, nothing. It's just for some reason these. See if you can. I don't know if you can tell, but some pages are yellower than others. And she's definitely run a lot more, and they still deal with a lot of like the Fae and Celtic mythology, but she's written stuff that's different. That's not. So I went and I like, again, another author that I like the writing style and I like her world. I mean, if it's fantasy, there's more of a chance I'm gonna read anything by the author than if it's non-fantasy. If it's one of the other genres, like historical fiction or like horror or something. Because even with Stephen King, I've loved most of his work, but there are some series I'm just not interested. So, and this was a situation, again, another situation where I've only had mass market. Same with Robin Hobb, I only have mass market copies. And so I have thought about trading them in, but I feel like, but then at the same time, I'm hesitant to do that because most of my mass markets were gifts. If I didn't buy them, they were gifts from Terry. And so I feel guilty for trading them in and getting, because she gave them to me. So I feel like I should at least try to read in this edition. It's just I don't like reading for mass market anymore. So I go back and forth with it. But I mean, it's not hard. It's not that hard. It's not like I'm squinting or anything when I read it. It's just I don't find it as appealing anymore reading for mass markets. But I will probably keep going with this one along with in this. I think I might just read in this edition, and the same thing with the Robin Hobb instead of worrying about. But now with Brandon Sanderson, I might switch them out because I read all the other books by him, and then so all my copies of the Stormlight Archives, which he's not going to be on this list because I've already read a lot of his books. So he's not going to be, I'm not going to talk about him, but he's one of the ones that I've had where I traded in my mass market copies of some of his books or not trade them in, but asked for new copies that were regular size. So yeah, I might just stick to this. But the only other thing is my copy of Sun of Shadows is a regular size paperback, not mass market. So that's my only hesitancy. But maybe what I'll do is just read these editions and then maybe one day send them to the Roast Office, maybe, or the Black Castle books and get different copies. I don't know. But yeah, she's another one I want to read more from. And then now we have, this is another author that I've only read 2 books by them, and I have 2 more books by her that I recently bought. I still have another one of hers to buy from, and I don't know if there's any more, but this is Sarah Waters, and again, another author that I like the writing style. It's very, just very warm and lyrical, just very comforting to read from her. And in most authors, there's a lot of authors that I feel that way about, that they're very comforting, like Robin Hobb and Julie Marillier, or some of the other ones that I feel very comforted by their writing style. Now, of course, even if the writing style isn't comforting, but I still enjoy the story, then, because Stephen King, I would not use the word comforting to describe his writing style. But I do still love his work, so, because, I like the plots. But, so this is Fingersmith by her, and then the only other book by her that I have is, The Night Watch, or The Night's Watch, or something. I can't remember, but that's the one that does a really good, a really unique way of telling the story by going backwards, with starting from the big climax, the big event, and going back in time and seeing the story, the history of the characters, and seeing how they ended up here, how they ended up where they are in the beginning of the book. But I have not picked up this book yet, but I do want to pick it up soon. But I like her writing style, and her stories are really intriguing. So I want to read this one, and then the other one that I have, and then I want to buy Affinity by her. And but yeah, so that's Sarah Waters. then we're gonna go ahead and talk about some classic authors that I want to read more from. So this is an author, so let's talk about Oscar Wilde. I really enjoy, I absolutely loved Picture of Dorian Gray, like most people do, and I've read 2 of his plays from this collection, The Importance of Being Earnest, and I think Lady Windermere's Fan was the other one. And again, another author that I like the writing, and his books are just really funny and fun to read, even if they're a little sad at times. And I feel like his books are even though it was written a long time ago, I feel like they're very relatable. Like, a lot of people can relate to some of the issues that he talks about in his stories, like A Woman of No Importance is the other one I read. I did not read Lady Windermere's Fan. It was A Woman of No Importance I read. So I gotta read Lady Windermere's Fan, Salome, and An Ideal Husband. And there's, again, just something about his writing that's just, I don't want to use the word comforting, but it's the only word I can come up with. But I want to read all of his plays, and I want to read, and I actually have a bind-up that I need to read, and I got for Christmas in 2019, I think, or 2020. I mean, that I got, which it's a whole collection of all his works. It's the Barnes & Noble one, and I don't know if that one has all the ones in here as well, but I do want to read that as well. And that's actually one of the ones that I probably should prioritize because I got that as a gift. It's like, do I prioritize? I feel like I'm caught between prioritizing the ones I bought for myself that I haven't gotten to, and prioritizing the ones that were gifts for people that I haven't gotten to yet. So I go back and forth with them, and but yes, Oscar Wilde, he's just so fun, and I want to read more from him. Okay, and then we have another author that I just kind of started getting into her, and she was kind of, what's the word, Jane Austen, contemporary of Jane Austen's, and at least according to the movie Becoming Jane, I guess, but that might have been one of the fiction aspects, because that's one of those movies where they took something in history and kind of spun it, did a fictionalized take on it, on what could have happened, how it could have been, and in that movie she met this author. But I don't know if that really happened historically. I don't know if she actually ever met this author. But that's Anne Radcliffe, and this is The Mysteries of Udolpho. She writes a lot of, Gothic literature. And again, I've liked what I've read so far. It's just, it's slow moving, which, I mean, obviously I enjoy it because I've gone pretty far. It's just, I have a weird, I'm very weird. Like I said, I'll put books down, and when I put books down, that does not always mean I'm not going to come back to them, that I'm not as interested in them. But I guess maybe that's not weird, because I think it's probably more weird for people that aren't not 100% part of the bookish community, people that do read, but they're not part of our community, like, but they do enjoy reading. For them, it might be weird, but obviously when I watch on BookTube, I hear other people doing the same thing, is putting down a book and deciding I'll come back to it later, and usually saying they do love the book. It's just they're not in the mood. So I probably don't really need to explain that to people. I mean, at least I hope I don't. But, yeah, I would be curious, though, if Jane Austen actually met Anne Radcliffe. Like, was that part historically accurate in the movie Becoming Jane? But it's just, her, it is very interesting. It's like, but it's just slow moving, and it's not, it's not as fast paced as some of the other books these mod books I've read from the contemporary. But I want to keep going with her work because I do like her writing, and her stories sound really intriguing. So, yep, Ann Radcliffe is another one. So, then we have an author that only, as far as I know, only has one book out yet. So this is one of the authors that doesn't have anything else, as far as I know, out. This is her debut. So maybe I shouldn't count her on this list, but I really was excited. I'm really excited to see more from her, and I can't wait to see what else she comes up with. So I am including her on this list. And then is Virginia Fito, and her debut is Miss March. And it was just so good. I mean, obviously, because I bought it. Originally I got this from the library, and I was very excited that it was there at the library, because sometimes newer books, especially in certain genres like thrillers and stuff like that, they're not always there. But I feel, so this was one of those ones that I'm surprised. I was surprised that it was at my library at the time, but that's where I first got it. And then I ended up deciding to buy it. And it's a small book, so I'm breaking my rules about the hardback thing and buying it. Deciding to buy it because it's small. I really enjoyed it. And I'm excited to see what else she comes up with. And I'm curious what else is she gonna write? Is she gonna stick to the same kind of thing, or is she gonna write something different? Is she gonna try different genres? I think it's exciting when you like a debut and you're curious to see what else they do, what else they write. And this was just such a compelling read, and this woman being inside the main character, Miss March's head, is just so fascinating, and it's kind of disturbing, but in a really engaging way. But yeah, I'm excited to see more from her. So she's really the only author on this list that I haven't seen anything else from her. That I know she hasn't read anything else at least not lately. Okay, and then let's get back to the classics. So, this is one of the ones that I did start, but then I put it down, and I haven't picked it up, and I got a different copy of it, so I don't have a bookmark in here of where I last left off, but this is The Woman in White, and by Wilkie Collins, and Wilkie Collins is, again, another author, like, most classic authors, I'm going to like their writing. Not always, but, and he writes a lot of mysteries that are engaging and interesting and just really exciting, and just it makes me curious when I read descriptions of his books. And this is another author that I want to read more from. So, yep, so that's Wilkie Collins is another one. So I'm probably going to get the Moonstone next. Now, which I keep thinking is there was a movie that came out years ago, that was a fantasy, which I'm guessing has nothing to do with Wilkie Collins, that was also called The Moonstone. And I keep getting those two mixed up. I keep thinking, it's based on a Wilkie Collins, and I doubt it is, because it's a fantasy, and I don't think Wilkie Collins ever wrote fantasy. So, I think the closest to fantasy would probably be more supernatural, like ghost stories and potential ghost stories, rather than I don't see him being someone who writes, in the fantasy genre. So, it probably has nothing to do with it, but it has the same name. Okay, and then we have an author that I know has written quite a lot of books, and that is Joe Abercrombie. And I've read the first book, I really liked it. I liked his characters. His books are really fun. It's grim dark. And this is the second book in his first trilogy. what is it called? It's First Law trilogy. That's the second book, and so far I really enjoyed the ride of his books, or at least the one book of his that I've read, and I like the writing. I like how the premises so far of his works, and I hope to read this one soon. I mean, I probably should maybe read it like now, this month. And I want to read all of his other works as well. Like, I'm very excited to read his works. And there's also his YA. He wrote, I think it's supposed to be a YA series. And the first book I think is called Half a King. I think is the first book in his YA series. I'm not 100% sure on that, but yeah, I really like his work and his premises. So I want to keep going with Joe Abercrombie. That's the author, in case you don't know. Okay, and then we got. And then we have some more classic authors. Okay, so this next one, I want to read the author's most famous work again, because I've already read it. And I want to try to read it straight through instead of stopping and putting it down for a long period of time. That's a habit that that's one of my goals I want to work on with my reading, is trying not to put down books for too long. And just picking, but that's George Eliot. And her most famous work is Middlemarch, and I really enjoyed it. I've also read Silas Marner, so I've read 2 of her works. And this is another one of hers that I have, Daniel Deronda. And, again, another one that the premises sound really engaging and interesting. I like her writing, and also, to be honest, I probably just get caught up, people on BookTube get me excited to read these authors. Like, they get me motivated, and again, I'm not that hard to please, but, I mean, I have my preferences and stuff like that, but, yeah, so George Eliot is another classic author I'm excited to read more from. And then now we have Elizabeth Gaskell, and I read North and South, and I actually like that better than Pride and Prejudice. I mean, I do love Pride and Prejudice. I do, like everybody else does. But I kind of like North and South better, and maybe that's because, maybe that is partly because of the hype train. It's like everybody loves Pride and Prejudice, so I'm gonna, say I like something else that's not Pride and Prejudice, but has a similar plot. But, her other book, so Elizabeth Gaskell's other book that I have is Wives and Daughters, and I think I recently bought another Gaskell book, that I want to read, but, and I think I have another, George Eliot book as well, but, again, I really like Gaskell's. I mean, most of these is just going to be, I like their writing, and their stories sound interesting. But Elizabeth Gaskell's another one I want to read from as well. And then this last author is one that this is the one, I wanted to save this one for last, because this is an author that I'm still trying to figure out if I like them or not, and if I want to keep going. But, I'm excited, I always get excited to check out some of their other works, now I don't know how many other books he's written. I have to look him up and see if he's written any other well-known works. But that is William Gaddis, and the two I've heard about are J.R. in this book. And the problem is this writing style, I'm not used to it. It's very stream of consciousness, I think. I think that's what this writing style would be. And I'm still trying to decide if I like stream of consciousness or not, because when I tried to first read Virginia Woolf, I did not like it. I couldn't get into it. So, at the time I was thinking, I don't like stream of consciousness. But I did the one book by Allie Smith that I read, I think it was Autumn, the first book in her seasonal quartet. I did like that. Of course, the thing is, of course, I never bought any more of her books. Might not be stream of consciousness. It might just be because this, again, is done with those authors that doesn't have as much punctuation, or at least does not have like quotes and stuff like that around the dialogue. So, but like there's just certain, like, I want to keep trying this kind of writing to see if I can get into it. I mean, this was probably not the best place to start. Because I feel like these, and it's not just because I want to conquer the beast, because I recently read a review on this book, and it's not because, I'm thinking about DNFing it, because obviously I still want to keep going with it. I'm still interested, but I was curious about what other people have said about it. And one review was like, I think people only, now I didn't read it thoroughly, so I can't really, but I got the impression the person was just saying that the only reason people read this is because, and they got this from an article that they read where, like, that it's just more about conquering these size books, and that they only say they love them because they read it, because they accomplished reading this book. It's like climbing Mount Everest. You say that Mount Everest is awesome because you were able to do it. And I disagree with that. Because there are so many, I've seen like quite a few, like Chris from Leaf by Leaf, and there's one other reviewer that I watched talking, in the way they talk about it, you could tell they read the book and that they actually enjoyed it and had a good time with it. So I believe there are people that are capable of reading these kinds of books and enjoying it, not just feeling like, I conquered the beast, I read this, so now it's awesome because I actually read it. I don't think it's like that. I don't think everybody feels that way. I think there are some people who genuinely love this book. And I think the only reason people can be sometimes critical of that is because they don't understand it. Like, they don't get the appeal of it because they just couldn't get into it, or they just didn't like it because it was too confusing or something. Which is fine and good. That's great if that's how you feel, but I feel like don't just assume that people only are reading this book because, they just want to prove they read this book and so they can be all superior. And to me, it's not like that. But I mean, this is the challenge. This is can be very confusing. And my biggest problem is I have trouble with, picking the bad times to read these books. Like, it probably was not, I mean, it did help a little bit that there were at least a couple times where I had quiet time. And like today I probably could have, today in the car I probably could have read it. But I wanted to make some progress on Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, where I probably could have read it yesterday. Before my extended family stopped by my grandma's house. Or before we went out. Because we did, go out for for family dinner. But I definitely need to read this when there's quiet time and I can concentrate and I'm not too tired. Like right now I probably could read it if I wanted to. I mean, I probably should consider reading some of my books, the two books I brought with me, read a little bit more on both those books today. But it definitely requires a lot of concentration from me. And a lot of focus. And a lot of commitment on my part. And that's just my biggest problem is I don't give my brain enough ability to focus, because I put myself in a position where there's too many distractions when I try to read a book like this. But I also I'll watch videos where they talk about this book or books like it, and all of a sudden I want to pick it up and bring it with me wherever I'm going to read it. And there lies the problem. All of a sudden I get excited to read it, and then I always read it at the worst times. So but yeah, he's someone I want to keep trying with. And I don't know if there's any other books besides JR by this author. I need to look that up, but I want to keep trying with this. So some of these authors, it's more like I just want to keep trying with them. Like you could say that Dante, as well. Like, he's an author that this is a different kind of challenge for me. because I'm not used to, I don't read a lot of the epic poetry, but I want to keep trying and reading it, and I like challenging myself. Not just because, see, I can read a book this size. Yay, I accomplished it. It's genuinely that I want to challenge myself, and I feel like these works like this have so much to offer as far as story goes. I think they do have a lot to offer, and that we get so bogged down by, I could potentially get bogged down by the writing and miss out on all that. So I want to keep trying. But yeah, so this is the only author on here that is like, it's risky, and maybe I might change my mind in the future and give up. But as of right now, I don't want to give up, because I feel like there's so much that sorry. Talking too much. Tickle my throat. Of course it's not. But I want to keep going. I want to keep trying. So these are authors that I want to keep trying with, or I know I want to read more from. Or authors that that might not have a lot out yet, or like one author that there's only one book they have out yet, but I'm looking forward to what else she has coming out. So are there any authors that you guys really have liked so far that you want to keep going with this year, or within the next 5-10 years? Is there authors that you feel like they could be your favorites one day? Feel free to share in the comments below, and if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, click subscribe. If you haven't already, click the bell notification below if you want to be notified when I post new videos. And I hope you're enjoying your reading and staying happy, healthy, and safe. All right, bye!